Welcome to Tsuriou, another session of the masterclass. Today we'll be teaching you of mastering environment factors for maximum result. This topic, we have a lot of things to cover, especially for if you're new to go squid fishing. So what will you have to look in the weather, what environment, what condition, what water condition. So this topic will cover all of that, and will teach you all the things that you need to use through your phone, Google Maps, and all those kind of things. So this will help you to improve your chances of catching by going when it's more optimum condition. So that way you will have increased chances of catching as well. So first thing first, there's a lot of different apps to check on weathers and the condition of water, everything. But to make it simple, today we'll teach you using the Willy Weather. Willy Weather is just a website, so you can just pretty much go to Google to search. So initially what you want to do is, if you are going to, for example, one of the pier, let's say for Victoria we're going to Rye Pier, you just go to Google and type Rye Pier weather conditions, then you search through, you should see Willy Weather pop out. So once you have that, you click on that, then you can go to the website, and all the details we'll cover here as well. So first thing first, whenever you go to a new place, you want to understand what is the orientation of the pier. So you need to know north, south, east, west, so that with that you will know how direction of the wind will be coming. So which side of the pier you'll be fishing on the day, will be more optimum because of the wind. If let's say the wind is coming from north, and the pier is facing this way, and the north is coming from the back, the wind is coming from the back, then you'll be fishing towards the end of the pier, so that when you cast out, you go to the end of the pier, go towards outside. So you have a back wind, so that when you cast, you go further out. So how do we do that? So first thing first, go to your app, to Google Map. So you search, let's say, for Rye Pier to get the orientation. How do you do that? So once we search the Rye Pier, we click on that. So once you get there to the page, this is what you see. So I have printed out as well. So the first photo is what you see. So there's no orientation mark here. So they're supposed to have one of these arrows. That's the orientation. That shows where it's north and where it's south. But with the initial photo you get, you do not have that because it's already in the north position. So this is what I searched, just search. So it just do not show the north, but because it is already facing north. But if you want to get the north arrow coming out, then you have to do this. You do a twist. So once you do a twist, this arrow starts coming out. So once the arrows start coming out, you will get that. So this icon. So the red is facing the north and the white is facing the south. So you know that this way is facing north and this way is facing south. This one is already north orientated, so you do not show the mark. So you just show north is facing this way, south is facing this way. So you'll know that with that orientation, then you know which side of the pier, this pier, you'll be fishing based on the wind condition of the day. So this is important to know. A new location before you go, you want to know the orientation of north, south, east, west. All right. So I covered how you get the orientation. You can use your Google Maps to get that. Once you have that, you'll get to Willy Weather website. So I searched for Rye Pier, and I looked through and looked for Willy Weather. Willy Weather is not a really good prediction for wind, so do not always take what they tell you, because their prediction is quite off sometimes. So I'll teach you how to see what is the actual compared to what is predicted. So try to use a few other like Bureau of Meteorologists and all these things, different website or different app. But for simplified, I'll teach you through using Willy Weather. So once you get into Willy Weather, the website, you have all these different tabs. The weather condition, the wind condition, the rainfall, the sun, the moon, the UV, and the tide, as well as the swell. So these topics are all very important to try to determine how the condition for the day that you want to fish. So first thing first, look at the weather. So today, the weather is cloudy, so it's all right. So, but you should look at the day before or the day prior as well. If it's raining for the past 2 days, I would skip probably a day or two because there will be too much fresh water in the bay. When there's too much fresh water, the squid tend to go deeper, where it's more consistent with the salinity and everything. So do understand, just don't look at the weather of the day, but try to look back 2 days and stuff. It's not that you can't catch when it's rain or heavy rain and stuff. You can still catch, but the chances are lower because they tend to go deeper, where it's out of the casting range for land-based. But there's still some, because the sea is so big, your some will still come close to the shore as well. So that is one thing that you have to understand, that the weather of the day, it doesn't matter just the day, but try to look 2 days before so that you can see what the water condition will be. Will it be murky or will it be clear? If it has been raining as well, the thing has been stirring up, the wind has been strong the past 2 days, so the water will be dirty as well. So from that knowledge, you will tend to want to know that you might want to skip a day for it to clear up as well. Okay, so this is the weather for the day. All right, so next we cover the wind. Wind is very important. Wind direction determines how you cast and what technique you want to use. So if you're casting and let it drift, then you can use the drifting method. So if you cast it this way and the wind coming from this way, then you let it drift slowly. If you're using the egging method, the more aggressive method, then you try to get depending on where the wind's coming from. So if they're coming from this way, you cast it out, let it drift a bit, then before you do the hop. So you have to manage the line as our previous master class teach. So wind direction is very important so that you know will it be easy to fish for the day. If the wind's coming from the back wind, it will tend to be much easier. So if you're coming from the front, so it will be much harder because your jig will be constantly pushing towards you. So the line management have to be more accurate as well, because constantly you have loose line. It's harder to read when the squid is hooked on. So for wind, this is same thing as well. Once you click on the next tab in the wheelie weather, you'll get that. So the wind, so this is the predicted wind for the day. Usually we tend to go to, they have like mild, moderate and stuff. So we usually try to get 15 kilometers and below, because they tend to be more calm and gentle. But it's above that, usually is become a bit rough. So it's more safer to go, that is when the wind is not too strong, because if it's going above 20 kilometers an hour, it's more snapper type of weather, so it's more rough, the water will be more choppy as well. So try to go below 15 kilometers or below 20. So pretty much it's no different to boating as well. So the boating, if it's above 20 kilometers, if you're small, teeny and stuff, you tend to not want to go out because it's a bit rough as well. So squid fishing before you go is pretty much the same as kayaking and boating. You have to look at the weather and the condition as well. So this will actually help you to maximize the potential of having the squid there, and to have a more chance to catching them when they are more in the feeding frenzy and the feeding mode. So okay, this is the predicted weather. So as you can see, today's wind was actually not accurate. So the black line is the actual wind that actually happened. So it's very important when you go boating and kayaking and as well as squidding, try to look for the black line, because if you're out there and suddenly the predicted wind is so strong, you'll be stuck and you'll be in trouble. So always try to get other app as well to try to compare the wind. So this is very important. So wind, they have the wind direction as well as the strength of the wind. So this is important. So the strength determines like how windy it is and stuff. If it's too windy, it will be hard to read the line, and it's very hard for you to cast as well if it's a headwind coming towards you. So wind is one thing that you need to understand, and it's crucial as well. So wind also determines how choppy the water is. If the wind is too strong, usually it will colorate that the water will tend to be more choppy. Yeah. So okay, we cover the wind. Next, we cover rainfall. Rainfall is not so important. It's just more that if you want to go to fish when it's raining or it's not raining. So rainfall, but it's important as well that you try to understand the rainfall from the past 2 days, from previous conditions for the past week, so that you know that if it's too much rain for the past week, then you will want to tend to give it, like I said previously, a day or two before you go fish, because there will the more water will be all churn up, it will be all more murky. So you want it to have time to clear it up, as well as to let the seawater push back in to clear up the fresh water in the bay, so that we have more salinity so that the squid will come back closer to the shore. Because if you have too much runoff from the land of the fresh water, the squid tend to move further in because the water is too brackish, so that they tend to not want to stay around too close to the shore. So rainfall is not too important, so we skip that. We already covered that. So the next thing, sunrise and sunset. This is one of the most important. So sunrise and sunset is where the feeding time is. So it'll tell you when is the sunrise, and when is the sunrise, and when is the first light, and when is the sunset. So the sunrise is the time when the there you go, we have sunrise and first light. First light and sunrise is different. First light is when you first see starting seeing the small light coming out, so the twilight. Then after that will be sunrise. So before you see the sunrise, you see the light. So first light, always try to go before the first light. So you try to fish before the first light until the sunrise. Actually, before the first light, that is where the prime time is, because it's still a bit dark. So they're in the feeding frenzy, and they also have they're still undercover. They're not so exposed to the light where they can be easily seen. So before sunrise, usually we go before sunrise, an hour or 2 hours before sunrise. So we usually fish that, and until sunrise, that's where the prime feeding time is. Or during sunset as well, before it goes totally dark, we go once the sun starts coming down, that's where they actually start feeding. So because they're starting to get dark, so they are more active. But once it get dark, they get quiet a bit at night. So you have to go before the sunset. So sunrise and sunset correlates to their feeding frenzy. So that's the way the time they feed. So it tend to be much more easier to catch them. So the squid technique, the squid jig colors and all this, that is not so crucial. Not so you don't need to be so technical and tactical to catch them, because they tend to be in the feeding frenzy. They're not as picky as when they're in the quiet, more cautious mode when it's dark at night or when it's hot sun in the afternoon. So it's important to know the sunrise and sunset, but do keep in mind about sunrise and sunset as well. We'll correlate it with another topic in a sec, so that these two, if you can combine them together at the right timing, it'll be even more effective. So the next is the moon phase. Moon phase, I personally do not fish if it's a full moon. I prefer not to. It's not that I can't catch, it's just that the chances of catching is much lower because they tend to move deeper. Because there's a scientific reason of that, so that one we'll cover in a future topic. But same thing as well, usually people say when it's full moon, it's hard to catch big fish as well as squid. It's not that you can't catch. Like I say, the sea is full of squid. It's just that the catch rate is much lower compared to a normal day. So we usually prefer not to fish during full moon. If you're on a boat, that's fine because you're going deep. But if you're on the land base, usually I prefer not to, because you spend more time and effort to try to catch the few squid around. So moon phase is up to you, but personally this is from my experience, because some people just say that that's just a myth and stuff, so it's up to personal opinion. So personally, I just do not like to fish during full moon. So for UV index, the next topic, UV index. So UV, normally when it's sunny day, you think that the UV might be high, but actually it's not. You can check the day by day. Actually, sometimes when it's cloudy, actually the UV is higher than when it's full sun. So you have to check the UV. What's the purpose of checking the UV? It's not that important, but this is actually for you. One is to protect yourself from skin cancer, so you can put sunscreen on and stuff. But the other thing is that if you want to utilize UV squid chicks, so if you see, even if it's a cloudy day, you say, oh, there's no sun, what's the purpose of using a UV jig? But no, look through the UV chart. So actually the UV rays will be around. So sometimes the UV rays is high, so you can still use the UV jig effectively, even if it's cloudy. Because it might be cloudy, but the UV rays is actually very strong. So you still charge up your UV jigs to attract the squid with a UV silhouette. So UV, you don't have to check, it's just up to you. But normally, pretty much if you use UV jigs in the daytime, when there's sun around, there's cloudy day, that's fine, because usually they tend to have UV in the atmosphere, so that's enough. So, but if you want to be more accurate, then you can check on the UV rays chart for the day on a really weather as well. All right, so the last thing, tide times. So it's important. This is not so important for squid, but it can be very important as well. So it's because it's hard to match the weather to high tide and low tide, because you try to maximize your time to go fishing, because it's a good day to go fishing than sitting at home. So it's very hard to try to to correlate the sunrise and sunset time, or the prime time, the sunrise and sunset, with the high tide and low tide as well. But if you can correlate the both together at the prime time for both, that will increase your chances of catching much faster as well as more effectively. But it's not that important that you have to totally match it with the sunrise and sunset. But if you could, then the chances of catching will be much better. So here we'll show you this, the time here they're showing the low tide. It means that when it's at the lowest point. So you have to understand that. It's not that when that's the low tide, no. So the tides keep coming down. So the time they're showing here is the lowest point before they start going up again. So the high tide here means that when it's going to the highest before it starts coming down. So understand that the timing that they're giving is actually to show when it's the lowest tide and when it's the highest tide. So you want to fish 2 hours before this time and 2 hours after this time. So let's say for incoming tide, so you give it 2 hours for it to slowly coming up and 2 hours for it to go out. So this is time. Let's say now we are coming from here to high tide, and this is the lower tide. So we want 2 hours before here and 2 hours after. So we check the time. So if we can match it, if the time match it with sunrise and sunset for the 2 hours before and 2 hours after with this time, then it will be a very prime time. Because why? So high tide. So when the tide is coming in, the incoming tide, so the 2 hours before it peak, so they're pushing the new. So before actually what happened, when the tide changed, whenever a tide changed, the water condition changed, because the water start moving and the temperature will change as well. So once it start moving, you actually will, all the predator fish, all the squid, they'll start become excited, because they know food are coming. So they become more hungry. So they tend to be in a feeding frenzy and waiting for food to be coming as well. So if you can match it with the sunrise and sunset where they're hungry time, then it will be much better. So what happened in the high tide? So when the tide is coming in, they're pushing new school of squid, as well as the plankton, bait fish. They'll keep pushing closer to the shore, because the current tend to be coming towards the shore, so to push up the water higher. So they tend to be pushing new school of squid, more bait fish, more plankton. So that's where the bait fish feed on the plankton. So the food chain starts. So when it happens, they tend to have more activity close to the shore. So you have chance to catch more on the shore. That's why people always say fishing go 2 hours before and 2 hours after the tide change. That's where the prime time is. So this is the same for squid as well. So if you go during this time, you might increase your chances of catching them much easier. So for outgoing tide, so what happens when outgoing tide? Incoming tide, you bring in more school of fish. So you say, oh, outgoing tide, everything is pushed out. So outgoing tide actually is not as well, because the squid will stay put at the area. And also what happens? So when the low tide, let's say the water initially was this high. Now the water has come down. So what happened? The area from the bottom of the sea to the high end of the water, the top end of the water, is getting shallower. So when it's shallower, what happened? When the bait fish are being pushed outwards to the sea, or they're just drifting around, because it's shallower, what happens? All the predator that is waiting, it's much easier for them to catch. It's harder for the bait to escape, the bait fish escape, because the area to catch them getting shorter. So it's just pretty much present them. So when the outgoing tide coming and the water is shallow, instead of up here, it's up here. So it's pushing the water out, and it's bringing the bait fish right over the squid. What they do, easy attack, they just grab it. So in the low tide, it's harder for you to squid, is because that your jig sink rate, you have to choose the right sink rate, or else you sink too fast and you don't have the opportunity to hop to entice them. So you also have to use like slow sinking jigs, or lower the size of your jig from size 3 to size 2.5. So jig size and jig sink rate will come into play when it's low tide, because the water column become less as well. So also that it's easier, they are active because why? Because the water column is smaller, much shallower. So when the bait fish will pretty much tend to get closer to the squid is, so that they can see the bait fish, they attack. So high tide and low tide, there's different activity that's happening. That's why there's creating fish and squid tend to be in bigger fish and squid, the predator fish and squid, they tend to be in a feeding frenzy. Because why? Because of the water column getting less during the low tide, and it's easier for them to catch, and it's harder for the bait fish to escape. And during high tide, they bring in fresh bait fish coming in, being pushed towards from the current to refill the area of the land. So this is pretty much what we have to cover for today. So if you can, try to match the sunrise and sunset time with the 2 hours and before and 2 hours after during the tide times. This will help increase the opportunity for you to catch, because those 2 times will actually increase the activity of the squid. The behavior they will change. They will tend to change from a more cautious mode to a more feeding frenzy. So that the chances of you catching squid in a much shorter time in a more quantity is much faster. So this is one thing that you can cover. So if you have any question, I'll stay for 5-10 minutes before we move on to the next topic. So I'll go off for 5 minutes or 10 minutes to prepare the next topic, and I'll come back. So if you have any question, do let me know now. So I'll see what I can answer. All right, I think. Any questions? I think no more questions. All right, I'll see you in the next masterclass.